Hey, what's up, you guys? Back for another social studies lesson for you. This one today I have on Hannibal, Hannibal Barca. He's one of my favorite people in history, and his story begins in the Second Punic War, right? So last week I had you guys learn about the Punic Wars. You wound up doing a Google form on them, reading a little bit about the Punic Wars. Today I want to focus just on one guy called Hannibal, because he is an extremely important person during this war. And he's also personally one of my favorite generals in history. So let's get started at that. You should know, and I'm going to try to do this as quickly as I can here. You should know that Hannibal is born into a very wealthy and powerful family called the Barca family, right? His father's name is Hamilcar, right? And he's born in the city of Carthage. Here's the city of Carthage for you. I printed a couple things out for references. The city of Carthage being absolutely beautiful. By all accounts, the city is more beautiful than Rome is at this time in history. And one of the most unique features about Carthage is that it has this beautifully constructed, man-made, really marina, where they dug out by hand these channels, and they have an inner and an outer port area for ships and merchant ships and warships, right? Absolutely beautiful, with a small entrance into the inner area within this circle, and all docks, all of these different docks that each ship can dock at. So beautiful city, powerful city. This is not a weak city by any means, not a weak empire by any means, but it's greatly weakened after the First Punic War. If you recall, during the First Punic War, the outcome was that Rome takes over Sicily. They lose that important territory that they relied on for food as well as for economic reasons. And so Carthage has to wind up becoming powerful again. And Hamilcar recognizes that in order to become powerful, he's going to have to establish more territory, more colonies in Spain, right? And there's a lot of silver in Spain. So his idea is conquer parts of Spain, make a lot of money with all that silver, and that will help make Carthage more powerful, right? So has his son, Hannibal, right? And Hannibal grows up a very unorthodox childhood. He's focused solely on the military, and his father has a deep hatred for the Romans, and he gives that hatred of the Romans to his son, and that's his main focus, right? Even making him take a blood oath, right? Taking a blood oath to his god Baal-Hamon, and promising, all right, the story has it, promising to always hate Rome and do whatever he can to destroy Rome. And that's a promise he'll keep to the end of his days. He will always be trying to destroy Rome. And he comes very close at doing it. So Hannibal winds up leaving Carthage at the age of 9, goes to Spain, and they start to create this Carthaginian foothold in Spain. Rome is not oblivious to this fact and recognizes what Carthage is trying to do and wants to end it as soon as possible. They have their own problems on their hands. They are taking over territory in northern Italy, and there are groups that are revolting against the Romans at this time. But what they wind up doing is they create a pact with the city of Saguntum, which is in Spain, and tell them that if they're attacked by the Carthaginians, the Romans will respond and give them help. And they wind up accepting this. They create this alliance, right? And Hannibal, as years go on, eventually winds up taking control of the military, right? A large group of forces. He knows about this pact, but he doesn't care. He winds up attacking the city of Saguntum, laying siege to the city, and because the Romans are so focused on what's going on in northern Italy, they don't have an opportunity to send troops to try to defeat Hannibal in Spain. And so their cries for help essentially go unanswered in the city of Saguntum. Eventually the city falls, terrible things happen to the city, and the Romans send a response. They send an envoy or envoys over to Carthage, the city of Carthage, and they tell them, look, you guys broke a deal that we have with the city, you knew about this, and you did it anyways. Our conditions are, you have to hand over Hannibal, he has to be punished. To which the response is no. And that's essentially what begins the Second Punic War. So Hannibal kind of begins the Second Punic War. But remember, his main goal is to destroy Rome at all costs. So war was going to happen one way or the other. He brings the war to Rome, and he kind of takes it in his own hands. As soon as the war begins, Hannibal goes into action. And a lot of people think that the attack is going to come on Carthaginian soil. And it would. Hannibal knows it's going to. But he's going to beat the Romans. He's going to beat them to it. So he does something that is completely unpredictable. Instead of preparing for an attack, he goes on the offensive. Right? He doesn't go on a defensive mode. He goes on the offensive. And he leads an attack over the most unlikely place that the Romans thought an attack would come from. And he winds up bringing his troops over the Pyrenees, which is in northern Spain, makes a right-hand hook, goes behind the Alps, and then crosses over the Alps. Not only does he cross over the Alps, but he does this in the late fall, right? So absolutely frigid, and but completely unpredictable. And that's one of the things that makes Hannibal such an important person and such a brilliant person. He's unpredictable, and he's able to create amazing tactics in short periods of time and analyze the enemy and get to know what they're going to do before they even do it at times. He's a brilliant strategist and tactician. So winds up crossing over the Alps in the late fall. Before he crosses, about 90,000 troops and 34 war elephants. Right. By the time he gets to the other side, only 20,000 troops are left. And only a handful, some people think 2 or 3 elephants, something like this. Just a couple of elephants left. But enough to terrify the Romans, because many of them, practically all of them, had never even seen an elephant, right? Let alone fight against one. They didn't know even what they appeared to be, many of them. And so at the Battle of Trebia, the first one, the Romans are panicked now. They send an army up as quickly as they can to go fight against Hannibal, and they go to the Battle of Trebia, and Hannibal is going to outwit them. And one of the things he uses are those elephants, right? The elephants are very foreign to the Romans, and he uses that terror that they have to make them essentially rout or destroy them. Even the horses were scared of the smell of the elephants, and so by all accounts, you have this disorganized army because of the terrifying presence of these elephants. Ultimately, the battle is lost by the Romans. Hannibal gets his first major victory here, and he greatly needed it because he only had 20,000 troops left. They were greatly demoralized, and he needed more troops. And so one of Hannibal's strategies is, if he winds up winning battles, he's hoping that he'll be able to encourage the local populations, especially in northern Italy, places that were revolting already against the Romans. He's hoping that as he wins, he can get their support to help him defeat the Romans. And he does. He gets the support of many tribes. Probably not as much as he had hoped for, but he does start to get more people join his cause, right? And so the Romans will organize another army and send another response to Hannibal. After the Battle of Trebia, they're not greatly affected by this. They think maybe they rushed into certain things, but by no means are they like, okay, panic mode, right? They're maybe a little bit of panic, but they're not as panicked as they're going to be after the Battle of Cannae, by any means. So they send another military detachment, an army, against Hannibal, and in this case, it takes place at a place called Trasimene, Lake Trasimene. And the battle in itself, I don't want to go too much into detail with it, but it is a brilliant battle where, once again, Hannibal is able to outwit his opponents and even take 30,000 troops, because that's about what he had at the Battle of Trasimene, something like 30-something thousand troops. He's able to take those troops and lay a complete surprise attack on his enemy. All right, surprise attacks happen in small numbers usually, but in this case, 30,000 people are in the woods, completely silent, waiting for the order to attack. And as the Romans are going by down this road by the Lake Trasimene, gives the order to attack, and they're completely enveloped immediately. We're talking probably within a matter of minutes, most of the army has been destroyed. They couldn't even get into formations because it was so quick, and because they were hiding. They were so close. We're talking just feet away from the enemy, completely hidden out of sight, even though they were only a couple feet away. Just brilliant, right? And so the Romans suffer tremendously. Most of the army is dead. And those troops that are trying to get away run. And the only direction they can run in is to the banks of this lake here, and they can't swim because they're wearing their armor, which is very heavy. So many of them are trying to swim, they drown, and those that recognize they're going to drown fight to the death. Essentially, it's a bloody, brutal battle. But Hannibal is able to make a strategy and completely decimate his enemy. So after Trasimene, people realize Hannibal is a good tactician, and they need to get rid of this guy as soon as possible, right? And so one of the things that they start to do after the Battle of Trasimene is they go into defensive mode, and they start burning their own crops because they recognize, well, we're having a hard time beating him on the battlefield, but what if we starve him out? What if we can starve him into submission? And so they destroy their own crops, which is very unpopular, and they're hoping that he'll just have to leave or starve to death, right? But the Romans will wind up getting sick and tired of this strategy, which was led by one of Roman generals, and they'll wind up saying, that's enough of that. We are fighters. We're going to go fight them on the battlefield like we normally do. And so they put together this very large army, 86,000 troops roughly, and 6,000 horses, and they're going to just completely envelop them. They think they're going to overwhelm Hannibal on the battlefield with their sheer numbers, which most people would say that's probably going to happen, right? But in this case, we see one of the most impressive battles in history, one that is still studied by generals still to this day, even in our own country. And so they need food. They go to Cannae, which is relatively an open area, and there are granaries there to feed the troops. So